Some say these are the best road bike wheels money can buy. This is a set of wheels from Princeton Carbon Works. It's a company based in Connecticut in the US, handmade and famous for their wavy design like this and exceptional build quality, and you might have seen the really funky paint designs as well. But today we actually get a chance to go really in depth with this review. And I'm really curious to know, how does this measure up against our current benchmark and against some of the Chinese wheel competitors as well? Because
performance is just fantastic and really very, very impressive indeed, especially given the low price.
These at 3,600 quid had better be really, really good. Before we get stuck into these, I want to remind you all about what I consider to be the current benchmark when it comes to premium road bike wheels. And that is the Fast Forward Ryot 44s. I know that I bang on about this, but it's for a very good reason. Now, let's go through the details very quickly. They come with 3 hub options. One, their own hub, ignore those, and then a DT Swiss 350 and a DT Swiss 240. These hubs, no matter what you say about them, they're well sealed, they have very common components, and every bike shop around the world will be able to source parts, pretty much have them in stock or get them on next day delivery, and know how to fix this, have all the tools. Probably the most reliable and dependable hubs that you can buy, and DT Swiss are committed to holding spares for decades. That's got to be a winner in my book. Then they use the Sapien CX-ray spokes. Again, for decades, this spoke has gained a reputation for being strong and durable, reliable, always in stock, easy to obtain. And then, fairly uniquely, Fast Forward use brass nipples. Now this really slows down the process of galvanic corrosion that can happen when you have carbon next to aluminium. And when you're investing this much money into a wheel set, you definitely want them to be dependable and durable, especially if you're going to be riding them as one set of wheels all season long. If they're your best absolute race wheels, then maybe you might want to save yourself a few grams and go for some aluminium nipples, knowing that you're going to be more careful with the maintenance. And then it comes down to the rim shape, and they're very wide across here, which means you don't get that turbulent air in crosswinds. They feel very, very stable in even and windy days. They're fairly deep. They come in a 44, a 55 and a 33. The 44 is definitely the most popular. And of course, they are hooked, very easy to mount tires onto. They're made by a company in Holland. They're distributed by a company here in the UK. Customer service is very easy. They come with a wheel bag, everything. It's just one of those things. Go 1,500 quid for the 240s, 1,300 quid for the 350 version. This for me is the benchmark. You have to come up with a very compelling reason as to why you want something cheaper or better or more aerodynamic or stronger or whatever. For me, everything we're going to talk about is based on this today, this benchmark. So what do we get for all our extra money? Here it is then, a closer look at this Princeton. This is the Peak 4550. So the 45 relates to the shallowest part and the 50 relates to the deepest part. You get a certain amount of different hub configurations. So you have a White Industry hub versions. You also have a DT Swiss 240 and a 180, a Chris King, and now they're producing their own tactic hubs. And I have seen some versions coming with tune hubs as well. So these are, I guess, the base spec, around £3,600 for the White Industry hub, the Sapien CX-ray spokes, and then the Princeton rims. First thing that really stands out to you is the finish quality of the Princeton rims. Absolutely looks beautiful, and also they are a closed off design, so they haven't been drilled all the way through. So you don't need extra rim tape to make these completely airtight for tubeless. It does mean that when you want to build a set of wheels, that you have to thread like a little magnetic part onto the nipple, move it around with a magnet, and then thread your spoke in. How successful you are at that really does depend on how clean it is on the inside. If you've got any sort of tenting or ridges or bits of bags left over from the manufacturing process, it's an almost impossible task. Sometimes if they're nice and clean, it's actually a very, very easy task. So we'll have a look at that in a second. The next thing is they are using aluminium nipples. These are really designed as a race day wheel, the ones that you really, really do look after. So if you are going to invest in these, you need to look after them, keep these lubricated and keep water away from them, stop that corrosion digging in. Use the Sapien CX-ray spokes. We have got a direct comparison here. There's no carbon spoke wizardry going on here. And then of course, we've got this White Industries hub, and that is where I want to start taking these apart. So White Industries is another American company, so I can see why they're quite keen to go with these guys, because that whole made in America tie-up. And they're probably similar to us here in the UK being very sort of sentimental about hope, for instance. How these work is there's a little hole here in the center lock system, and we're going to undo 3 little grub screws on this to get into the hub. So we don't need to loosen it very much. I'm just going to turn that around and all three. See, I'm just holding on to the bottom of the hub so it doesn't all fall on the floor. And that way we can release this end cap and then we can get access to a hub. Okay, so what we can first of all see is a very traditional looking ring of teeth around here, and these are using the ABEC 5 bearings from Enduro, the low contact seal one. So this light blue sealing, fairly good bearing. I wouldn't say they're the best in the world out there, but they're not a bad choice. But no ceramic wizardry in there at all. Probably the best quality standard bearing that Enduro make. The rest of the hub design looks very familiar. If you're familiar with looking at things like Hope hubs or Industry 9s, that all looks very normal. This are the bits that really matter though. So these are the hub end caps, and these are non-anodized, just polished aluminium. I don't have a problem with that because polished aluminium is probably one of the best ways of preventing corrosion. So as long as it has been polished to a high standard, that should be okay. This concerns me. This is a steel washer, so you need this because this is going to separate the bearing here and the bearing inside the hub. Problem that I have with all the hubs that have this design is that you have a hard steel washer. I'm spinning against this soft aluminium axle here, and if these bearings start to fail and there's any sort of movement in there, you can, well, we've shown it on the channel before, you can see where these steel washers eat into this axle and eventually cause a point of failure. Now, this wheel set has actually been used by a few other journalists and stuff, so this is not brand spanking new out of the box. And actually it's quite handy because you can start to see evidence of wear here, and especially in terms of under rotation. So we can look here, you can show the scoring marks of the bearing running against here, and then it suddenly stops. Actually, you can already see a scoring mark where that washer has been running. There's a line running the whole way around. Sort of worryingly, this under rotation mark here doesn't line up with the under rotation on this side. So on this side, we've got an under rotation mark here and here. So it's not filling me full of confidence that this is a very well aligned hub. And then we have the free hub system. Now there's no preload spacer in here at all. We've just got two separate bearings. Now this bearing here is quite a unique bearing. You can see how wide it is. So this is not a bearing that most bike shops would have in stock. We certainly wouldn't do unless we were like a dealer for White Industries or something, and it's a common thing. The pulls require these little steel pull springs here. When anyone that's a fan of Hope hubs know how much these can corrode. And the pulls themselves have these two little teeth. So this is going to really help with the points of engagement so that we have a faster hookup. Annoyingly, the only sort of weather sealing these have is a standard O-ring. Now this is a pretty old-fashioned way of weather sealing hubs. In fact, nearly all hub manufacturers now are making their own seals, like a metal backed, and probably have like a double lip seal for like a labyrinth effect. DT Swiss do it, Hope have done it in a slightly different way. Just an O-ring really isn't good enough these days, to be fair. How the preload works on these, once you've got the hub back together, you just need to add a little bit of pressure to this ring and then just go around, and it's a kind of gently, these don't need to be that tight because you're only working with soft aluminium. You know what, it's spinning okay, but like compared to the Corimas and things like that I've been running, which are exceptional, what you'd expect from like a Hope hub or something similar to that. Okay, let's take a closer look at the rims and the general build quality, because that after all is what Princeton really bring to the party. The hubs, you can switch out and choose your own hubs. One of the key reasons that you might want to go for a rim of this design over the fast forwards that I showed you previously is because it might give you a couple of different advantages. One, this wavy design, potentially it can mean that you can run a deeper wheel than you would do normally, or would perhaps want to, without sacrificing the side wind sort of stability. I think Peak Talks channel has done a pretty good job of showing us that there's very little difference in aerodynamics in a straight line between most of the wheel brands. And the Corimas that I've been running, which I talked about on the Mallorca video, which we'll link down in the description, I definitely noticed that 47mm deep rim definitely responded more like a 55mm deep, because it was very easy to catch a side wind. Now, a talented bike handler can just deal with it, but it's definitely slightly unnerving if you're not quite sure what your wheels are doing when you go past a gate and the wind catches it or whatever. So one of the advantages to this is that you could potentially run a deep rim without necessarily getting all the crosswind, nervous handling of a deep rim. The other advantage you might get is that if it is lighter, then you might be able to run that deeper rim without sacrificing rotational weight. So those are the two performance advantages. The other advantage might be in general quality, longevity, warranty, which is what I'm going to try and look at next. And the only way I can really think to do that is to get a boroscope down here and take a look at the inside, because I'm not about to start taking a hacksaw to these. Now, what I'm looking for here is a really smooth interior, because we've got to run nipples around the inside with magnets. We definitely don't want any ridging, tenting. And the only way they'll achieve that is they use something relatively solid in the construction process. So the compaction is being done against something like wax or polystyrene or something like that, which they can then melt out afterwards rather than like inflatable bags. So this is all looking absolutely really beautiful in there actually. So what we're looking at there is the nipple seated on the bed, and you can just start to see that the spoke is penetrating slightly. Now there'll be some pro wheel builders out there having kittens about that. Now in reality that small amount isn't massive. It would be nice if it was flush. Now one other feature I do want to show you before I show you the others is these do have a pressure relief hole as well. So they often drill these because in the unlikely event that air can seep past this hole and inflate this chamber, what you can actually do is inflate this, bang, and you get a fairly big explosion. I think Envy really struggled with this in the early days of its carbon wheels. It's not so much a problem now because most brands will drill this, but not every brand does it universally. So let's take a look at some comparisons. This is a rim from a company called Light Bicycle. We're going to be covering them a little bit more on the channel soon. This is one of their Falcon models and an all-road rim as well. So take a look. The biggest difference here is the surface quality. First of all, you can see this surface finish, which I'll talk about more in the actual Light Bicycle video, but right now I'm most interested on the inside, and straight away you can see this tenting, and in fact if I run the boroscope across you can feel that as a ridge. Now the important thing that those ridges don't appear where you actually drill, because you don't want your spoke nipple to be sat on one of those tent ridges. So if it is, that's where we need to get in there, and we can sort that out with various tools to smooth that out. But this rim is only like 300 quid retail, shipping, import taxes, everything. So quite a difference. And this rim is from another Chinese company called Ven, a company that we've dealt with for quite a number of years now. Good, reliable communications, tend to be good quality. And straight away we put our probe in here. It's nowhere near as clean as that Princeton. Just that evidence of tenting in areas there. Again, this kind of happens because of how they actually create the pressure on the inside to actually create the compaction to make sure you don't get loads of voids and everything is compressed as the resin dries, or resin cures rather. So these little ridges of resin that you see in there, what we call intenting on this, is essentially where excess resin has flowed, where there's been a crevice in the compaction bag, whatever they've used on the inside. It doesn't need to be there, it's just adding additional weight. Does it make the wheel any weaker? I'm definitely not a carbon expert, but I do know that when I look inside these things and it's beautifully smooth, tends to be a good sign. It really does show that someone's put some care and attention in the construction, that they've really tried to make sure that all parts of the surface have had equal compaction. So it's a nice sign of quality, and I can't really comment on whether it actually has any impact on strength at all. Okay, this is the fast forward then. This has already got rim taper on, so it's going to look a little bit different on the inside, but there is our nipple head. So this uses the Preload nipples, which has got that slightly extended surface. There's no point doing them on the Princetons because you can't get access to them from the top either, but that is looking an awful lot cleaner on the inside. Yeah, there we go. That's a beautiful shot there of the inside of the fast forward. You can't see any of that spoke protruding. You shouldn't do anyway because the nipples are extended, and the inside of that rim looks lovely and clean. So I hope that little look inside the rims was useful to you. Take from it what you will. It's always nice to see. Okay, you're wondering how those 250 pound wheels from David Arthur stack up with this comparison. Well, I can completely see that those rims are probably not a factory second, but probably rejected from Elite's normal range. I can imagine that coming out of the mold, being weighed and seeing it's perfectly safe and robust, but for whatever reason it's got too much resin in there and the weight is just too high for what they want to advertise on their main site. So it makes complete sense to build it up into a wheel set and try and sell it through their Aliexpress site. Totally get that. Better that it goes out and be used by someone rather than just going to landfill. The other thing they do to get that price down is those Pillar spokes. Now, Pillar make okay spokes. They're at least branded, they have a website. The Pillar wing spoke is okay at best, but they are quite hard to obtain in quite a lot of countries. We definitely struggle because Hunt use them as well. And we really do literally have to hunt down these spokes. It's not as simple as just obtaining a DT Swiss or a Sapin. Aluminium nipples, we know that they're going to corrode, but hey, 250 quid, why the hell not? And that hub, you know, with no details on there, you are really depending on being able to buy a free hub, an axle, end caps, all that sort of stuff from. So anyway, get down in the comments with your thoughts and opinions on that. And if anyone out there is a carbon expert, please add to the discussion down there as well. Next up, I want to look at the general build quality. We're going to look at the spoke tension and the general trueness. Now the spoke tension needs to be probably around 120. These feel exceptionally tight, I have to say. And putting these onto a fairly rudimentary system, these are coming in at a reading of 16. Now, the 16 actually relates to a chart that is calibrated rather than actual measurement on these, which is going to be given us between 119 and 133. So this isn't the most accurate way that we can do to measure these, but it's what most wheel builders would use and what you've probably got access to at home. I think one of the things, if we do more wheel reviews, I probably will get a digital set so that I can actually give more precise. But for now, what we're looking for is, are they all relatively equal and are they all up to tension? That's definitely the most important thing. So these are all looking very good, all reading 16. That one's a little bit under, 15 and a half maybe. And that one's a little bit over, probably more like 17. To be honest, this is what you would expect to see from any hand-built set of wheels that you get from a local bike shop. I'd expect them all to be within about 5% variance of one another and the entire wheel to be built up at 120 kilograms of force. Depending on the manufacturer's instructions, I think we've covered this on the channel before, but these are definitely built very, very tight. And on this non-drive side, which is probably always problematic, these are reading at about 11. So we're trying to reduce the amount of variance between those two sides, and they do that by having different sort of length flanges, etc., to try and cope with that. Sometimes you might see asymmetric rims, but generally speaking, what I'm looking for now is, one, are they tight and are they consistently tight? This side, there's a couple that are a bit over. That was an 11. This is just reading 10. So I think as a wheel builder, there's a couple on this non-drive side that I'd want to sort out. Yeah, that's almost reading 12. I've seen better, put it that way, but these have been ridden by a few people, so they could have had a bit of a knock. I'm not entirely sure of the history, to be fair with them. The next thing I want to do is have a look at the true. The first thing I want to do is the radial true. So on this dial indicator, it's actually a millimeter the whole way around. So if you see the needle swing a full half circle, that's half a millimeter. And what you're seeing here is the needle move between the 20 and the 40. So really plus or minus 1/10 of a millimeter, which is fantastic. It's what the standard wheel builder will do. We try and build a wheel to 0.2. And in fact, all of our apprentices would actually pass their apprenticeship. They actually do have to build a wheel to 0.2. So that is pretty much a good industry standard. A poor industry standard would actually be more like 0.5. So let's take a look at the lateral true. Again, this is probably even better than 0.2. This is probably more like 0.15. Very impressive, actually. Okay, so general wheel build, definitely the trueness is fantastic. The spoke tensions could be ever so slightly better. With all that said, I think we need to get a set of tyres mounted to this and take them for a ride. Tyres I'm fitting to these are Michelin Power Cups in a 30. 30C seems to be our best selling size in the shop now. Again, get it down in the comments below. Let us know what you're running. For us here up in the Lake District, we're nearly getting exclusively asked for 30mm tyres. If you haven't seen the video review that we did about Michelin Power Cups and the new Pirellis, etc., again, I'll link that down below as well. Ultimately, it came out that I still think the Michelin Power Cups are one of my favourite tyres. Someone did actually put in the comments about a concern about the width of the actual tread, and that some racers have been complaining that really in extreme cornering, they don't feel like there's enough tread there. I haven't come across that either with myself or anyone else in the shop, but I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on it. I'm intrigued to get a set of calipers out and measure it. Now I'm fitting this up with a tube just because these are a demo set of wheels. I need to give them back. So if anyone was wondering about the origin of these have been lent to us from Princeton. So we do have a trade account with the people that distribute Princeton Carbon Works wheels here in the UK, probably like most bike shops do, but that's really where the relationship ends. These have been lent to us because of the YouTube channel, and we're considering reviewing them because we can offer them as part of our custom build service, but that's really where that affiliation ends, and hopefully you'll see this review is as fair as anything else we do on the channel. So here's what they look like blown up. They're not a completely smooth transition that you might find on a Zip. And they definitely don't have that big part of the rim overflowing like you might get on the Rovals. And these measure 30.07 on here. Probably I'd argue a 28 might suit this wheel better, but we all have our 30s. It is a perfect day for testing a set of wheels like this. It is windy and blustery, kind of trees moving everywhere. Now, if you're going to test a set of wheels that claim to be better in crosswind stability, this is it. Here are your three questions. 1, are they faster in a straight line? Absolutely no idea. 2, do they accelerate better? Well, yes, marginally, from a standing start almost. The first few pedal strokes to get the momentum spun up. Yes, there is a small difference. 3, are they better in a crosswind like this? Well, on a scale of sudden jolt to steady push, they're definitely further towards the steady push end of things. Are they better than the Zip NSW range? One thing's for sure, they certainly don't help anymore in a headwind. Okay, let's have a sit down and have a conversation and see if we can bring this review to some sort of meaningful conclusion, with the realization that we are reviewing something at the extreme luxury end of road bike wheel sets. I do believe that these wheels are better. They do offer some of the tangible benefits that they talk about. Whether that's enough for the price, we're going to get onto in a second. The big thing for me is that I really don't think those white industry hubs offer any sort of tangible benefit to Princeton. I don't think they bring anything to the party. If it was me and I was looking at a wheel set in this luxury end, I think I'll be looking at a solid Chris King build, keeping that whole American theme, with some brass nipples and having a really good, dependable set of luxury wheels, and then probably look at the Tactic hub builds with aluminium nipples as your ultimate race day weapon. I don't think there's any need for them to have the white industry hubs. I don't think they bring anything, even though they have titanium drivers. One of the reasons for that here in the UK is that the parts and bits for that are imported by a company called Sideways Cycles. I'll put their website up here. It's a bit of a weird relationship, a bit of a retro bike shop, hasn't updated their website since the early 2000s. And for this sort of thing, you need that support, I really do think. So the general design, it's a little bit dated in my opinion. So Chris King build, I'm all over that. The DT Swiss build is solid, but hey, come on, you're buying something American. You're sort of buying into that whole made in America engineering vibe. So put a Chris King on it or go for that Tactic option. Okay, next up is, what other options are there? Well, the obvious option here is the Zip 454, 858, the NSWs. And I have ridden those before and they're very impressive. They're probably one of the few wheels that if you could ride, you know, a blind taste test if you like, I think I could say, yeah, this is a Zip 454. They've got a very distinctive sound and they also feel very stable despite their depth. And that's similar to what we experienced here with the Princetons. I would like to try the much deeper ones because I really feel like the tangible benefit for riding this type of design is that you would ride a wheel set deeper than you would do normally, knowing that you're not sacrificing additional weight or additional sidewind stability. So that is a view that I'm hopefully will be bringing to you at some point. There are some other brands out there. There's a company called Lamina who's doing something similar. I don't really know much about them. And of course, the one that's hitting YouTube at the moment is a company called Super Team. Super Team did reach out to me a long time ago saying, will you review our wheels? As always, I said, yeah, okay, I'm kind of interested. Here's my criteria. If you can show me that you can ship spare parts and you've got some ongoing service and how someone can contact you, yeah, I'll take your wheels in. Didn't hear anything back from them until recently when they said, we've sent you some wheels when you're doing the review. I'm like, I haven't received any wheels. And since then it's gone very quiet again. So I've obviously noticed the wheels from Durin Rider and a few other YouTubers. And so definitely for consideration if that's the sort of vibe you're into. And again, more on that in a second. We've also got some stuff coming onto the horizon from things like Light Bicycles with the Falcon wheels, which aren't quite the same design, but we're going to cover them in a future video because we are doing some work with Light Bicycle who offer something in the space like you've seen. So with that in mind, let's have a chat about where that line of diminishing returns are. You see, there is a point where what you get for your money increases quite well, and there's a point where that line will curve, and as you pay more, you get ever decreasing amounts of benefit. Now, I put up a little post on our YouTube channel asking you guys where you thought it was, and fairly unanimously you guys agreed, 53% of you agreed, that somewhere between £1,200 and £1,700 was about the sweet spot for something that you felt was like dependable, I'm going through your comments here, was good quality and high performance, and you'd be willing to spend, and anything you felt over that, you got some diminishing returns. The next second popular category was the up to £1,000. And then we have the David Arthur's under 500 quid, the 250 quid mark. And that presents us with a fairly interesting conversation, because if you can buy a set of wheels from AliExpress with a copycat rim design that we know works relatively well, they have some cheap spokes on there from Pillar and the part availability is poor like we've discussed, and the hub part availability might be poor. But for the price of these Princetons, you could buy 12 sets of those AliExpress wheels. It puts a whole new dimension on the idea of disposable wheel set and diminishing returns. And I have to say, I really agree with you guys. Those fast forwards that I showed you are around 1,600 quid. The 44mm depth come in slightly lighter than the Princetons. The 50mm depth comes in slightly over. So the Princetons are 45-50, obviously that wavy design, are about slap bang in the middle on weight and durability and build quality and everything else. So what we are buying from Princeton is a marginal performance game in the shape of their rim, but the rest of it really is a emotional decision on the side of luxury, i.e. you're buying into the made in America sort of luxury vibe. And I get that. There are luxury products in every industry, handbags, high heels, fishing rods, super yachts, you name it. There is a product out there for every budget. If someone's got the money to spend on it, there'll be a company willing to make a product to meet that demand. That is just commercialism. So with that all said, I feel all I can say is that these are a high quality wheel set. They could be better. They definitely perform to a degree like they say they would do. And whether it is a wise purchase, only you and your emotions can answer, I'm afraid. And on that bombshell, it is time to end the video and hand it over to you in the comments.